So what do we do? Well, Arthur Schopenhauer, I'd like to say that this isn't a new idea. This is actually a very ancient idea. It's certainly ancient enough to have been written into the Bible. But it also goes back to the earliest times, and even in the 19th century, Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, said this: "Because Christian morality leaves animals out of account," wrote Schopenhauer, "they are at once outlawed in philosophical morals. They are mere things, mere means to any ends whatsoever. They can therefore be used for vivisection, hunting, coursing, bullfighting, and horse racing, and can be whipped to death as they struggle along with heavy carts of stone. Shame on such a morality that is worthy of pariahs and that fails to recognize the internal essence that exists in every living thing and shines forth with inscrutable significance from all eyes that see the sun." All eyes that see the sun. You know, Pope Pius in the 19th century and previous popes before him banned the setting up of a society for the prevention of cruelty to animals in Rome for nearly 100 years because he said human beings had no duty to animals. And then during the Second World War, another Pius said that it was ridiculous to feel compassion for animals as they went to slaughter or when they suffered brutality because it was no different from listening to the noises that steel made when it is hammered into shape. Okay, this was the same man that made a concordat with the Nazis so that the Vatican would remain safe during the Second World War, and who, I might add, just after the liberation of Italy, instructed the Americans that he wanted it absolutely certain that no black soldiers would be guarding the Vatican. That's there as a matter of record. Now, this is what happens when you start doing theology in isolation. Horrible things start happening because there is no worse cruelty than somebody else's whim being applied to diverse humanity with a rod of iron. You represent the means of saving humanity from nonsense like that, because each and every one of you has greater potential for real theology than some old gentleman shut it away in some Baroque palace somewhere. We find ourselves with the squalid reality of old gay guys who have never had sex with a woman, probably never had sex with a man even, pontificating about the realities of heterosexual marriage, about how to treat your children, about how to undergo that relationship, and banning all forms of contraception. We have the situation where people utterly isolated from the realities of the community are telling the community what they must do. This has got to stop. Luckily, in the case of Roman Catholics, about 96% of all Roman Catholics have completely disregarded what the Vatican says about contraception, which is unfortunate because the Vatican also says that if you practice contraception without asking for forgiveness and gaining absolution, it's actually a mortal sin, so you will go to hell. So 96%, you can ignore anything the Pope says about the Catholics being uniquely blessed, because according to doctrine, 96% of Roman Catholic, heterosexual Roman Catholics, are already doomed to hell by practicing contraception. I use it, prostitution. Well, I dare say he doesn't like that either. My point is not to bash Catholics. My point is that that is not an appropriate realm for theology. Appropriate realms for theology are in the reality of the praying people of God, whatever that community may be. Now, our community is largely lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, and the supporters and lovers and friends and parents of that community. It is from our community that we will find an appropriate theology for our community. And this appropriate theology, which we find, may well be appropriate for other people too. Because there is a grandeur in theology when it is based in reality. There is a truth which is true universally, as well as a truth which is true on an individual basis. So each and every one of you, I'm afraid, have a duty to hone your skills, to make sure you have your armor, to make sure you have your weapons, and to take in all the information from your community and from your personal experience and synthesize this with the tools that you gain into theology. into real work, into faith-seeking understanding. Faith that gains some understanding. Faith will never gain total understanding, but any understanding is like gold when you crave the truth, and the truth is God. And when you crave God, you must go seeking after the truth. There's no way to get around it. No way to get around it. And this business with the creatures that we share this earth with is integral to that, because most of us, how many of you got dogs? Yeah, there you go, you see. Most of us have probably had a very profound experience that these dogs are not objects. That these dogs are not objects that are subject to our every whim. These dogs are not robots, automata, that God pushed out in order to be used whenever we want. Or as you know, as the Pope says, that we can cut them to pieces when they're still alive. And we should not feel any compassion to the noises they make, because it is no different to the sound that steel makes when you hammer it into shape. We know different. I just dearly wish that Pope Pius had a dog. But alas, he didn't. But he still thought that somehow he should speak on the subject. Well, as I say, you are the people to rescue us all from nonsense like that. Because nonsense like that is still coming out of appointed theologians all over the world. They either don't see, don't understand, or choose to ignore the fact that their words have very harsh consequences in real people's lives. Not pretendy people stuck behind the walls of theological colleges and bishops' palaces, but real people. So that when some bishop in Jamaica makes a comment about gay people being lower than animals, he doesn't understand that that translates into machetes and human flesh. That translates into clubs and bone, that translates into dead people found on the beach the following morning, and that bishop is culpable for the reaction to his words. I preached and I wrote about something that happened in New Orleans about a year ago now, and I got into a bit of trouble for it, but I'm afraid I'm going to bring it back up.
It's all right.
Come on.
The Bishop of the Congo was invited to an Episcopal church in New Orleans last year. He was invited to a service where he wouldn't have to see too many gay folk. He was invited to a service whereby he was going to be with an awful lot of jazz musicians, and they gave him the chance to preach. They never once questioned him. And they gave him a nice dinner, and then he went away. Now, the Bishop of the Congo and his diocese has made it a condition of being thrown out of the church if you associate with gay people in any respect. He has described them as lower than animals. This same bishop presides over a country where I worked for 3 years trying to rescue a man who had fled from the Congo because he'd been driven forth from his home on threat of execution by a mob who came over to England, and I had to work to try and get him political asylum. And I know that the words from deluded old men like the Bishop of Congo translate directly, just like the other bishop, into clubs and human bones and broken bones and crushed skulls, into people devalued and people driven forth from their homes. And I wrote to the pastor involved after he criticized me criticizing it. And I told him what had happened to me, and I said, I myself have been queer-bashed on 3 different occasions. I remember exactly how it was. I'm not about to start ignoring the consequences of these words. I didn't so much as get the courtesy of a reply. But our theology comes out of experiences like that. And because we have had those experiences, our theology must prevail. Because our theology is the only truthful theology. All other theologies of the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender community